Everybody have a chance to review the minutes? There was one correction requested by Steve Rinaldi via email. It said in the minutes the building was an MCI building is referred to as an MCI. He's requesting that that be corrected. Any other corrections or discussion on that? Motion to accept the minutes? Second? Thank you, Skip. All those in favor? Opposed? Treasurer's report?
Sure. We're in very good shape. $536,000 in assets, most of which is liquid. There's only about $56,000 in receivable. The rest of that is real money. Our liabilities total $1,369. So the balance sheet continues to look tremendous. And we have the second sheet, some bills for approval, Centec postage meter, and it looks like core supplies, Tim, pretty much for the rest of those. Okay.
Correct.
And those come to you as a second motion from the board for your approval, unless you have questions.
Any questions or comments? All those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Rich, anything else for the
Two more things if I could, just ask for a little more time. One is, because of time constraints, we approved the budget, as you know, by an email vote of, Tim, correct me if I'm wrong, 24 in favor, none opposed, and no abstentions through email vote. For the sake of a record of conducting business in a public forum, I'd like to reaffirm that vote tonight. So I'm asking for a motion to approve the budget for the fiscal year that began 10/1/11 and ends 9/30/12.
Judith, you, okay. Any comments, questions, discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
One more thing, sorry.
Go right ahead.
Okay. I'd like to read a paragraph from the email from Mr. Rinaldi, who could not be here today. Tonight, Steve asked us to make a motion to accrue $13,000 for incentive compensation as a placeholder. He asked that we defer voting on the incentive compensation that's due to the staff of Remsco in this meeting until he could weigh in on it and work out some figure discrepancies with Dave Kowalski, our bookkeeper. So I will certainly bring Steve's motion forward that we side mark that money or earmark that money at $13,000 for its intended purpose. But however, I really want to resolve this in fairness to the staff that worked hard for this and is due this money. I want to resolve this by email prior to the next meeting. So I will start a thread with Mr. Rinaldi and the other officers of the board tomorrow, trying to get this done as quickly as possible. We owe them the money. We already approved the expenditure last year. It's a matter of squaring up what we owe people.
Okay. Any questions about that from anybody? Okay.
Nothing more.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Correspondence, all the excused members are on your agenda. Correspondence are up here if anybody wants to review them. There's no disciplinary actions to read into the record tonight. On the reports of committees, executive committee, everything we discussed upstairs will be brought up down here tonight. CON committee, do you want to take care of your business now, Evan? Or do you want to wait for the lower agenda item? Ron, CON committee.
My understanding is we're going to go ahead with the procedures and go ahead with the discussion on the warrant right now.
If you would like, that's fine.
Okay, and I believe our counsel, Terry Hannigan, is going to chair that.
Okay, we'll motion to close the meeting so we can open the public hearing on this matter. Evan, and seconded by Jim. Okay. Terry? Vote. Oh, sorry, my bad. My bad. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
The purpose of the hearing that's going to be conducted tonight is to explore the transfer of operating authority application from the current Emergency Squad, Inc. to the Troy Ambulance Service, Inc. The transfer authority application is being made pursuant to Public Health Law, Section 3010, which provides for a transfer upon the determination of competency and fitness of the transferee. And that's referenced specifically in Section 3010, Paragraph 2. Section 3010, paragraph 2, sub E, states, and I quote, "Any transfer effected in the absence of the review and approval required by this section shall be null and void, and the certificate of such ambulance service shall be subject to revocation or suspension." The significance of that statute is that if the appropriate process is not followed, that a certificate or a transfer of a certificate would not be voidable, it would be void, meaning it would be invalid, ostensibly without any further action being taken against it. Further, in the last paragraph of section 3010 is 3010-4, which reads, and I quote, "No ambulance service certificate of an ambulance service which has discontinued operations for a continuous period in excess of 30 days shall be transferable without the approval of the appropriate regional council." When the application was entertained last month, there were numerous statements that were submitted for consideration challenging the application on the basis that the ambulance service transferor had discontinued operations for a continuous period in excess of 30 days. There had been no determination by the State Department of Health or any other authority to that effect. However, the State Department of Health's obligation to investigate whether or not an ambulance service provider's discontinued operations is discretionary, and the authority for that is found under Public Health Law, Section 3012. Consequently, this regional council was confronted with the situation of having determined whether or not the ambulance service transferor had discontinued operations, and if it made such a determination, approval of the transfer would then require a separate approval by the Remsco. The authority for this hearing is found in section 3003, subparagraph 3 of the Public Health Law, which reads, and I'll paraphrase, "Each regional council shall have the power to do all things necessary, convenient, and desirable to carry out its purpose and for the exercise of the powers granted in this article." It's been the determination of this council that there needs to be a factual finding as to whether the transferor agency had discontinued its operations for a continuous period in excess of 30 days. The council decided that it will entertain public comment on that issue. In addition, the council has developed and prepared as part of the record a series of exhibits that are presently marked A through R, which will become part of the record for the hearing. I'm not going to go through all the exhibits, but I will tell you that Exhibit A is the notice for the hearing, which was published in the Times-Union. Exhibit B is the application for transfer of operating authority. And Exhibits C through R are to the best of our knowledge, all of the written submittals that the Remsco received in connection with the proposed transfer. So if there's anyone who had submitted something in connection with this application for transfer in the past, either in support, in opposition to, or in general commentary of the transfer, that documentation is part of this record. If anyone cares to inspect the record, it'll be here for you to do so. It's the intent of the Remsco to entertain public comment. This is not a hearing, a public hearing in the traditional sense that we usually encounter, which is a hearing to determine public need. This is a hearing to determine whether or not the transferor agency had discontinued service for a continuous period in excess of 30 days, and that determination, when made by the Remsco, will advise them or will dictate to them whether or not they need to make a further determination to approve the application as required by Public Health Law, Section 3010-4. There are some ground rules. If you wish to speak, we have 4 parties who've identified themselves as wishing to speak. For purposes of the record, we're going to limit your initial comments to 5 minutes. If there's a need to go beyond that, please let me know, and we'll attempt to accommodate you, however, to make certain we get this process moving along. And everyone has an opportunity to speak. We're going to initially limit to 5 minutes. If you feel that you can't express your opinion, or you are unable to express your opinion in that period of time, please let me know, and we'll try to reach some accommodation. If you have already submitted a written document to the Remsco, it's in the record. There's no need for you to repeat it verbatim. But again, within the parameters of your 5-minute time limit, you'll be given leeway to say what you need to say concerning your respective position. There will be an opportunity for individuals if there's a question of someone who offers testimony in this proceeding, if a member of the Remsco has a question, I would ask that you entertain that question. I will make facilitate the deliberation process. Additionally, if I'd ask anyone who wishes to speak to come up and either stand at this end of the room by the court reporter and to speak slowly. We put a chair out there if you wish to be seated. I'd only ask that if you do stand that you pause a moment so we can make sure we have you on camera in time for the record. At this juncture, I'm going to read through the list of those individuals who indicated they wanted to speak. The individuals in the order that I've been presented the documentation are as follows. Rich Ruther, to speak for the town of Corinth. Dick Lucia, town of Corinth supervisor, and Robert Hafner, attorney for the town of Corinth. Mary Ann Johnson, supervisor of the town of Bay. Connie Tubbs of the Corinth Emergency Squad, Inc., or possibly Tracy McIntyre, but apparently not both. Is Connie Tubbs here? Yes. Is there anyone else that submitted a request to speak at this hearing whose name I haven't read? Is there anyone who wishes to speak at this hearing that hadn't submitted a written request? Very well. At this point then, we'll open the public comment of the hearing, the public portion comment of the hearing. I'd ask Rich Ruther to please come forward and speak on behalf of the town of Corinth on the application. If you have a seat or stand.
I'll stand. I'm not going to do that, but I promise not to tie up your time. Just let me know when you're ready. You're good. Ladies and gentlemen, I just want to add to the meeting we had, I believe it was a couple weeks ago, correct? In regards to the CON hearing. The town of Corinth's opinion is that the emergency squad in Corinth ceased services on May 9th. And after that, no longer provided emergency medical services via the ambulance service that they have after that. They have been dispatched to the town of Day and still are dispatched via Saratoga County and have not responded in ambulance since then. On July 7th, or 4th, excuse me, during that weekend, the emergency squad turned over all their cardiac monitors and their AEDs, so they were no longer able to provide any kind of service at the BLS level and ALS level. They also turned over an ambulance, a fly car, and other assorted pieces of equipment to the town of Corinth. And at that time, the president of the emergency squad, Brian Martineau, told the town supervisor and the town board that he was no longer, the emergency squad was no longer providing service, and they were looking for other options to do community service at the time. Our argument is that they had lapsed their EMS service as of the 9th of May, and have not given many opportunities and still being given opportunities when the calls are activated for the town of Day. At this point, we consider the CON that the emergency squad had to be void and not transferable. We didn't have the document at the last meeting. I believe you have it now, Council, about the Sheriff's Department log, but I will give it to you. I think we sent it to you anyway, but in case you don't have it, there's the log from the Saratoga County Sheriff's. Yes, you have it. It's one of your exhibits, showing the last call activation. It was answered by Corinth Emergency Squad, Exhibit E. And at that point, we don't feel that the transfer is legal and fair at this point, so there's no grounds for the transfer to occur. I don't have anything else to add. Yes, sir.
According to the sheriff's log, the last call was answered on 5/9, is that correct?
Yes, it is.
Well, make sure I understand the date.
Yeah, and I actually labeled it right here, too. I marked it, so you can see that, in case you don't see it on, it's Exhibit E.
Yeah, but it's not marked on the
Yeah,
document.
it goes Corinth, and then it goes Jessup's Landing, and then there's no more Corinth entries after that.
Okay, so just so we're clear, the marking you referred to on your exhibit is actually, on Exhibit E, it would be the May 9th, 2011
Correct.
chest pain call.
Yes,
Thank you.
and they still are activated to this day and have been since for the town of Day, and do not respond and haven't responded since then. And my understanding is that they are in the process of have already liquidated most of their EMS equipment and are changing their status at this point. I don't have anything else. If you want me to entertain questions, if anybody has any or anyone. Yes, sir.
You said that because they hadn't operated within the last 30 days, that the
More than 30
transfer
days.
did not go through. I understand there are two separate questions here. One is fit and competency, and the other is our decision to allow, if someone is found fit and competent, allow them to operate. So do you have any reasons why they should not be allowed to operate if they're found fit and competent?
The emergency squad or Empire
I'm
Ambulance?
talking about Empire Ambulance, to whom this CON may go.
I'm only remarking on the CON issue and not the fit and competency of Empire Ambulance.
Okay, well, why shouldn't this organization transfer this? Because it's in their gift to do so.
Yes, we're making the argument that it's been over 30 days, and according to public health law, it's not a legal transfer if it's not actually valid anymore.
That's not true, though.
Okay.
Okay, what it is that they're fit and competent, yes or no, if they look at the sheet, and then have they operated, not operated for more than 30 days, then we have to say yes or no. But I'm looking for reasons why people should or should not grant that permission.
I can deviate from the 30-day question if you want. I didn't know if you wanted me to answer.
Well, I'm just asking
elaborate.
for information so I can make a determination.
Do you want me to answer that, or? Okay.
Question,
Okay.
fair question by the,
Okay, yeah, I wanted to stay with the 30 days, but that's fine as well. Numerous exhibits been sent to Remo as far as the operation that the emergency squad had in support of the town program that had to file a municipal CON. At this point in time, the town provides a service for their residents, and the town feels that it's in the best interest for the town to provide the service at this point, and that if Empire would to receive this transfer, we don't feel the service would be as good as what we're providing right now. We have 2 full in-service ambulances, 2 full fly cars, and actually at this point we provide service 24/7. We actually answer twice as many calls, undropped calls, and at the same time we do mutual aids for other agencies, Luzerne, Saratoga, other areas. And at this point, to bring in another service from outside that may not be stationed in the direct area, such as Empire. I don't know if Empire has intentions of putting 2 full paramedic ambulances in service in the town of Corinth. We feel that we will provide the best service at this point, and just transferring a CON would not give Empire any kind of responses that we have currently.
Thank you.
any other questions?
And, okay, anybody else have any questions?
No.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that. I'll leave this here with you just so that.
Actually, I don't need that, I'd rather not contaminate my
Okay, I won't contaminate it
It's
anymore.
Exhibit E,
Sorry.
it's Exhibit E in the record. And I apologize, is it Lucia or Lucia? Lucia, Mr. Lucia. Supervisor Town Corner.
I just want to say this, I'm going to defer to the attorney. Mary Ann Johnson, her husband is very ill, she couldn't come tonight. She wanted me just to say that for the record, and just to make sure that her letter she sent her gets read into the record. I'll defer to our attorney.
Okay, Mr. Hafner?
This is a good spot.
You're fine.
I'm candid camera. You okay?
Yep.
Okay, I'm Bob Hafner, I'm Manix, for Town Council. We're here tonight to speak on the issue that's before you. You've gotten our letter, which I think is one of the exhibits in here, which was dated August 11th.
Exhibit O.
As an Exhibit O, which has answered some of the questions you raised, I think to something that wasn't part of the public hearing, but I'll point out that we raised certain issues in there. Our discussion tonight is about the part of your policy statement, which you may find a reference here, which is dated May 26, 2006, which talks about your statement of rules about transfer of an EMS operating certificate. In that, on page 15, paragraph F, it says that the approval process assumes that the original holder of the certificate has been in continuous operation. That has not been the case. Sometime in late January, I don't remember the exact date, the paramedics were asked to leave the premises of the ambulance squad, and that type of ALS service was not provided for quite a while until they made some arrangements with someone else. I think during that time they continued to provide BLS service, but the ALS service that was necessary for the town was not provided. The town jumped in and was scared that its residents were not being provided with the level of service that their residents needed, and they got the temporary certificate of need, as you know, and they have been providing that service to the town and the village ever since. There, according to the sheriff's reports, there was a time in April into early May when the calls continued to be answered. But after May 9th, no calls were answered. We're talking continuous operation. Continuous operation means that you're continuing to provide services, saving people's lives, and they weren't able to do so. And we understand that, but that did not occur. As of July 4th, they were no longer able to, not only because of lack of paramedics and that type of expert help, but they gave us the ambulance squad and a fly car and their AEDs. So they were no longer able to physically be able to provide it with the materials that were necessary. So that is much more than the 30 days that is required. According to your policy statement, there are only certain circumstances that you're allowed to transfer, and none of them apply. You have our letter from before, and I think it's pretty clear that they have not been able to provide service since July 4th, when they had no equipment, and they did not in actuality provide service since May 9th, as shown by the Sheriff's Department. Is there any questions?
If I may.
Sure.
We've heard this July 4th date twice now.
Correct.
Was that the day that the town or the village?
Took title to and possession to the fly car and the ambulance and the AEDs. Rich, that's the day that happened, right?
Affirmative.
Correct.
And was turned over by the president of the emergency squad, who was acting at that point in time.
Right.
And they basically told us they were no longer providing service, and they wanted to get rid of the equipment. And we took the equipment and said, thank you very much.
And we appreciate it. We've used it to save people's lives.
And the feeling was that they didn't want to incur any more tax burden or any kind of more expenses for the residents for us to have to buy equipment all over again. So they did save some money in that process. And we thanked them for that when they did that. We were very
We
happy.
appreciate it. That equipment was, much of it was provided with grants
FEMA
that the
grants.
town and Rich and the town helped get for the squad to, again, save lives inside the town and the village. And now it's continuing to do so.
Hold on, counsel. Let the record reflect that the colloquy was between Mr. Hafner and Rich Ruther.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you. Any further, Mr. Hafner?
Just along the same lines that it probably could be addressed to either Mr. Ruther or yourself. Not knowing intimately the layout there, when Rich spoke, he said that an ambulance, I believe an ambulance, singular, and equipment was turned over. And then I thought he made reference to them having equipment but not functioning. Are we talking about the entire operational inventory of the squad, or was there equipment that was still retained by the squad after that July 4th date?
If I'm not mistaken, there was another ambulance that was left. They had told me they were selling their other ambulance. They had a total of 3 ambulances at the time. They were selling one to a private citizen, and they were liquidating, basically getting rid of all their equipment. About a month prior to them giving us the ambulance, we had heard that there was an attempt to sell the ambulances at a fire exhibition, the Chief Show. And an inquiry was made through a few people, and actually we found that there was an attempt to sell the ambulance and a fly car for a package deal and some other items. We contacted FEMA, and FEMA was not happy with the sense that they were selling granted material. And within the 3-year grant period after the grant has been received, they're not allowed to sell the equipment. And at that point, FEMA stepped in and talked to the president of the emergency squad, Brian Martineau, and said that any FEMA equipment needs to be turned over to us or the local municipality who has the responsibility to provide a service and make sure the citizens are taken care of. And that's been the standpoint of the town all along, is we just want to make sure people are taken care of, they go to the hospital, all the stuff that everybody knows we're supposed to do, and have some responsibility in that.
Let the record reflect that was Rich Ruther, again,
Correct.
and then colloquially answering Mr. Starr's question.
Did that answer all your questions?
Yeah, I think we have, you received a fly car and an ambulance. They had 2 ambulances that remained at the squad. Correct.
Yeah, and 3 cardiac monitors and AEDs, which are required, of course, for the LS level care.
Anything further? Thank you. Thank you, Sheriff. Mr. Lucia, I'm going to interject in the record here based upon your representation that Supervisor Johnson's not available. I know for the record that Supervisor Johnson sent a letter dated September 16, 2011, which is Exhibit L, part of the record. It's a little over a page long. The operative paragraph that states her position on behalf of the town, as writing as the supervisor of the town today, reads as follows. It's the 4th paragraph. I strongly urge you to prohibit any transfer of the CES license to Empire Ambulance Service and instead have it transferred to the town of Corinth for use by Jessup's Landing Emergency Service, not only because of the service they provide to us, but also because in today's economic climate, there is no need to burden the taxpayers of Corinth with an additional expense to them. If your decision follows the rules stated in New York State Public Law, Public Health Law 3010-4, then there should be no question that to transfer the license to Empire Ambulance Service would be a violation of this law. That's the operative language of Supervisor Johnson's letter. And again, under the circumstances expressed by Mr. Lucia, I felt it was appropriate to read that into the record. I'm also going to take an opportunity after the last speaker to read in to the record a portion of a letter that this council received from the State Department of Health on October 19th, but I'll do that at the conclusion. This time I'd ask Connie Tubbs to come forward. Okay.
I just want to, we were advised that we just wanted to let you guys know that the Prince Emergency Squad acknowledges receipt of a letter dated July 29, 2011 from Lee Burns, Acting Director of the Bureau of Emergency Medical Services. Upon receipt of this letter, the Prince Emergency Squad followed the letter's suggestion and established an agreement to complete the paperwork for transfer of operating authority. We exercised our statutory right to transfer our operating authority per Article 30. At that time, Prince Emergency Squad was statutorily compliant, certified provider, ready, willing, and able to respond to calls for transport service if requested. For these reasons, this is within our right under Article 30 to conduct this transfer.
Any questions?
Yeah, I have one, Terry. Just out of curiosity, I have a stack of exhibits that have been sent in by government officials, neighboring squads. When was the last call that you responded to? What was the date?
That I'm really not sure on.
Do you disagree with it being on or around May 15th?
Approximately, yeah, because we had Empire with us, and we received letters stating we were no longer going to be toned out. That all of our calls were going to be transferred to the town of Corinth Ambulance Service.
But you have a date when you last responded to an emergency call, a dispatch call?
No, I don't, right off now, because, like I said, we just stopped receiving calls, period. We were willing to respond. Empire brought their equipment up and everything, and when we had crews, we were willing to respond, but we weren't toned. So therefore, we were right there at times, but we were not able to
Yeah, I understand. I'm
respond.
just trying to give you the opportunity to dispute what others have said.
Right,
Your last response, and you can't, is what you're saying.
right, I'm really not sure.
May I speak? My name is Tracy McIntyre. I'm chair of the board of the Corinth Emergency Squad. During the time that we contracted with Empire Ambulance to provide us with ALS services, we did respond to calls. I cannot give the dates, but Mr. Shore can give us the dates that his employees were stationed with us. We did respond to calls when Jessup's Landing was toned out, and basically it all depended who got there first and what the need was on who transported. We may not have transported a patient, but we were responding to calls during that time.
Yeah, like I said, I'm trying to get some either verification or dispute of that May 15th date. Because one of the things that is raised, one of the questions that's raised, is that at least 30 days
Yes.
out of service, and we're trying to, disprove or prove that you were out of service for at least 30 days. That's one of our charges.
May I ask Mr. Aquino to supply us with the dates of services for his employees in Corinth?
They were our medics to respond.
Yeah, I understand that.
So we were fully staffed and able to respond.
And I know that their first day with us, we responded to a call over on Maple Street, the same time Town of Corinth did. So, like she said, Mr. Aquino would have all the dates and coverage.
Yeah, I'm sorry, that doesn't actually answer my question, though.
I'm sorry.
Dr. Daly.
God, it's nice to see your face.
You too.
When you say that you had the Empire medics up there,
Yeah.
were they in full compliance with Primo's ALS policy?
Yes.
And they had controlled substances up there?
Yes, we ended up getting controlled substances.
Okay. So you filed a separate plan and,
Yes.
okay.
Yeah, and we were
Those were
approved,
being done through Dr. Sakaris
the,
at the time?
yeah, their medical director. Yep.
And when you, this 7/4 date that everybody else seems to be talking about, the AEDs being given to the town and the life packs being given to the town,
Yes.
did you retain defibrillators at that point? Or were those
Empire-
the only ones you had?
No, Empire brought their equipment up,
Okay.
and when they stopped running and we went back to the BLS, they still allowed us to keep equipment to make us,
Make you whole?
yeah.
Any further, Ms. Tubbs? Thank you, Ms. Tubbs. I know for the record that Ms. Tubbs made reference to a letter from Acting Director Lee Burns from the Bureau of Emergency Medical Services. That letter is dated July 29, 2011, and it's in the record as Exhibit P, as in Paul. Anyone else wish to speak? Mr. Patrick?
No, I forgot, on 8/5 was when we transferred.
Yeah, why don't you come up here, Ms. Tubbs, so we make sure we got it.
On 8/5 was when we transferred everything to Empire on August 5th.
Okay.
Our last ambulance, the rest of our ALS equipment.
So the last day that you had equipment you want to call was
Was 8/5.
August 5th, 2011. Okay, thank you, Ms. Tubbs.
Yeah.
Okay, Mr. Patrick, note that you didn't sign up, but we'll...
I'm just gonna respond.
In the interest of justice, we'll let you, give you 5 minutes.
I'm Pat Fitzgerald from Government Plaza. I represent Empire Ambulance. And I'm not going to say new things, and I don't have evidence in terms of when Corinth EMS last responded to a call. I do know that they are an active New York corporation, and that I checked with the Department of State today, and they are still an active New York corporation. But I just wanted to respond to something that the attorney for the town of Corinth said. I'm not exactly sure what he was referencing to when he talked about Remsco's policy, but I believe he was talking about 0606. In that, there is the transfer of EMS operating authority provisions, which are subparagraph F, and I believe he stated that none of the transferable or transfer circumstances set forth in 0606 apply here or have been met here, and I just wanted to correct that. One of those circumstances is transfer of all or substantially all of the assets of a corporation to a new corporation or owner. And that's true for any not-for-profit, has to go through that process when they're transferring assets. An ambulance operating certificate is an asset of a not-for-profit corporation. And I have firsthand knowledge because the attorney for Corinth EMS and I have had conversations jointly with Patrick Morphy, who's at the Attorney General's Office Charities Bureau, and that's the step that you have to go through first in order to effectuate one of these transfers. So that is in the works, and you can't do that until we have permission from the EMS to do that piece of the puzzle, which is why anecdotally I've always heard, and I've heard from Karen Taddeo, why subparens 4 of this statute exists in the first place, because down in New York City, Big Apple was transferring through buying through bankruptcy court operating certificates and bypassing the Remsco on those. And subdivision 4, I'm advised by Karen Taddeo, who was involved in the process back then, was a reaction to make sure that the Remsco was part of the process and wasn't being cut out of the process. The other thing I just wanted to point out, I find it interesting that the town of Corinth, in the letter that was read into the record, and I think a previous undated
That was
letter.
the town, that wasn't...
That was in Corinth? The woman.
Supervisor Johnson, that was the town of Day.
Okay, excuse me, because I also have a letter that I believe is part of the record from Mr. Lucia from the town of Corinth, which says the same thing as the supervisor of the town of Day, requesting that the transfer not be made to Empire but that the operating certificate be transferred to the town of Corinth or the town of Day, which I find interesting in light of the argument, or their argument, that for some reason this can't be transferred because it's because of this 30-day rule. And I submit to you that it can be transferred, even regardless of whether or not Corinth EMS has been operating continuously for 30 days before this application was filed, but there's also disputing evidence in terms of whether or not they were operating. So
Thank you,
I've used
Counselor.
my 5 minutes. Thank you.
The last item, and I'll take.
This was in my, this is actually the contract between Empire and us, where we ended up transferring on August 5th. So that is actually when we, prior to August 5th, we were ready, willing, and able to respond.
I'll accept this as Exhibit S. And for the record, Terry, Exhibit S is a sheet that's just been handed to me by Connie Tubbs, and she represented it as the, for lack of a better statement, a bill of sale on Empire Ambulance Service letterhead evidencing a transfer on August 5, 2011. I have a letter that was sent to Tim Mirabili, which has been marked as Exhibit Q. It's from the New York State Department of Health, and I'm going to use my discretion as the hearing officer to read a portion of this, only because it addresses the, as a follow-up, the Lee Burns letter. But it was a response by Dana Jonas, Senior EMS Representative, to Mr. Mirabili, Tim Mirabili, Executive Director of Remo. And it reads in substantive part, at the beginning of the second full paragraph. This letter is to restate and clarify the department's position regarding both the ambulance operating authority, that is the subject of the application for transfer, and the former question regarding the authority's territory. As stated in my email response to you on September 20, 2011, quote, the operating certificate of CEMS is still valid and has not been revoked or deactivated under the provisions of Article 30, Public Health Law, Section 3012(1)(f) by the department, close quote. Furthermore, the department has not opened any investigation or received documentation substantiating that Corinth Emergency Squad, Inc. ceased possessing the capacity to provide ambulance service or maintenance of statutory standards for certification. Your counsel has a copy of a letter by Lee Burns to CES directing the service to transfer its operating authority if CES has determined the need to cease operating. The application received by your counsel is evidence of CES accepting such direction from the department and applying to transfer its ambulance authority. The letter continues, but that was the operative part, and it references an issue that had arisen over the Department of Health's ability to determine or to revoke or suspend a certificate under its enforcement provisions of Section 3012 of the Public Health Law. I would note that the operative language of the Public Health Law, Section 3012, and I'm only going to read a few sentences, it states as follows. Enforcement. Any ambulance service or advanced life support service or advanced life support first response service certificate issued pursuant to Section 3005 of this article may be revoked, suspended, limited, or annulled by the department upon proof that the operator or certificate holder or one or more enrolled members or one or more persons in his employ and subsection or subparagraph F says has discontinued operations for a period in excess of 1 month. The purpose for this hearing is because the department has the discretion to enforce it. They did not bring any proceeding to do that, and there has been no determination that the service was not operating for 30 days. Alternatively, there was no Under the statute, it was a discretionary right for the department to exercise, and they apparently did not exercise it in this instance. And that's the upshot of Mr. Jonas's letter, and the excerpt I read from Exhibit Q.
Excuse me, could I ask the date of that letter?
The date of Mr. Jonas's letter, Exhibit Q, is October 19, 2011, and it references an email of September 20, 2011. Yes, sir. Can I have your name, sir, for the record?
Yes, Victor Hubbard.
Victor.
I'm an attorney and CEO of Wilton Emergency Squad. I believe that letter is mistaken in its conclusions, because Lee Burns wrote a letter at the end of August inquiring and requiring Corinth EMS to document proof that they were in fact in operation.
Mr. Hubbard,
And I believe that that would constitute an investigation.
Thank you, Mr. Hubbard.
Yeah, I just, I understand your position, but what it boils down to is that certificate still exists today. Whether or not the Department of Health would take it, or, withdraw the certificate, nonetheless, they have not taken that action yet.
I don't question that. I just question the statement in the letter that was read, that there was no investigation when in fact Lee Burns had sent a letter requesting information to prove that they were in existence.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay.
And we have submitted a letter to Lee Burns requesting that they cancel CON. And we have not received a reply either way on that.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Mr. Bettini. David.
As a question of law, if the state does not rescind that license, it has nothing, it does not obviate our authority to say yes or no. So just because the state didn't withdraw it doesn't mean that we have no authority in this matter.
And to the contrary, Mr. Bettini, if the state had taken some action, we probably wouldn't be sitting here right now.
Right.
But unfortunately, they didn't, and we are. Brad.
Just a question and a point of oath. The question for Mr. Hannigan or Mr. Rabley. On what day was the Empire application received as complete? We're spouting out dates here. If we're establishing a timeline, we should probably have all the dates.
Well, I'm going to have to ask Mr. Miraboli. There's
it should be right on either first, second, or third page there. There should be a date in maybe the middle of that page. I want to say somewhere around mid-August we received it. August 18th, 19th.
It's signed by Mr. Retzlaff on August the 19th. I'm not seeing a date received.
I believe that was the date that Steve delivered it here.
There's a notarized signature from Mr. Retzlaff on the 19th, so it could not have been received prior to that date then?
That's correct.
Okay.
I have another question. When did the town of Corinth, I believe they did, and correct me if I'm wrong, put in for a municipal CON, which does not require our approval for 2 years hence? Is it before or after the application of
February. We granted it February 14th?
Yes. In February, we applied for the CON immediately, and through some, one issue. Working through the situation, working with a village, because we actually contain a village within the town. It was applied for, we actually have the CON date that it was approved and everything. What's the date on that?
For the village, it's February 18th.
And it was, I think
the town was earlier.
Yeah, the town was earlier. We're pulling it out now for you.
Wait, no, sorry. Sorry, I have the wrong date. Yeah, that was April 4th, but we were earlier in the town.
Okay, for the record, Mr. Hafner, you're representing the
Town.
The town of Corinth received a muni CON on April 4, 2011.
For the village.
That was
And
the
we
village.
earlier received one for the town.
I have it here.
The village, okay, the village muni CON was April 4, according to Mr. Hafner.
And I have a copy, so I have the original.
Okay, and also for the record, was Mr. Ruther, again, bringing in from the, Mr. Ruther, what, your position in the towns was before that?
Yeah, it's got it right there.
It's
February 16th.
February 16th. I can't give you, these are ours, but I can show them to you.
We'll accept your representation, Mr. Hafner.
Okay.
February the what?
16th.
Very good, thank you.
Mr. Hannigan, Ms. Tubbs had suggested that we refer to Mr. Aquino for the dates of service of Empire employees up there. May we ask, Mr. Aquino, when were your employees up in Corinth covering shifts to make sure that the ambulance was able to
The
roll?
last day we were there was June 1st.
June 1st?
That's correct. And we took possession of their ambulance on August 5th.
Let the record reflect Michael Aquino from Empire Ambulance.
Could I,
Stand up and identify yourself, Mr. Lucia.
Supervisor Lucia, can you tell me what the first date was?
I don't have the contract in front of me, but it was probably just maybe a couple months, so back June. Do you remember the first day? March or April of 2011.
Are there any other questions from the council? Mr. Stairs.
Is there, excuse me, does the public health law specifically address the term operation and provide us with a definition?
No. Let me just go back and check something, so I can say confidently now. I'll reiterate, no. Mr. Brandt.
I wanted to make the same point that I made upstairs, and again, I'll defer to you for correction if I'm wrong. But unlike the language of 3012, which is permissive, it allows the department to revoke or not revoke at their choosing, and apparently for with or without reason, an operating certificate is not active. The language before this council tonight is mandatory. 3012 paragraph 4 reads, no ambulance service certificate of an ambulance service which has been discontinued, which has discontinued operations for a continuous period in excess of 30 days shall be transferable without the approval of the appropriate regional council. So without your approval, this certificate is not transferable in my opinion. Am I correct in my interpretation, Mr. Henry?
Mr. Brad, you are in accordance with my interpretation, which is the literal interpretation of the words that are in the book. And that's, unfortunately, this is for the, I guess, the benefit of all, there is no case law interpreting this statute, and again, it makes it somewhat problematic, but makes it challenging for us, but we'll get through this. There being no further matters to be, either testimony or documents to be placed in the record, I'm going to advise, sorry, interrupt Ms. McIntyre?
Yes, I apologize. But just because we didn't respond to calls does not mean we were operational. We didn't have a crew. Other volunteer agencies have times where they cannot respond as well due to lack of crew.
Thank you, Ms. McIntyre. It's up, the charge of this council is to make essentially 3 determinations, and I've prepared a worksheet to assist the council. Typically, this matter would be referred to the Con Committee, and indeed it was, and the council could expect a recommendation coming from the Con Committee addressing or taking position on the 3 questions that this council needs to answer. First question being, is the proposed transferee, Troy Ambulance Service, Inc., competent and fit to operate the service as defined under, as required under section 3010, paragraph 2. And if the council finds in the affirmative on that question, then they need to determine whether or not the transferor ambulance service, Corinth Emergency Squad, Inc., did CES discontinue operations for a continuous period in excess of 30 days as required, a required finding under section 3010 paragraph 4. And if the council finds in the affirmative on that question, they would need to answer a third question, which states simply, does the regional council approve the transfer of the certificate of ambulance service operating certificate? If you were to find the negative on questions 1 or 2, you wouldn't go any further. At this point, I'm going to ask Mr. Eisenhandler to, Eisenhandler, if he would make a statement on behalf of the position of the Con Committee with respect to the application.
We did receive a letter from the Department of Health regarding fitness and competency, and their letter said, in essence, that there are no bars to fitness and competency for Empire Ambulance, which is certainly not a surprise. So to question 1, that answer would be yes. It's fit and competent. For question 2, the CON committee did not discuss that. They were looking for further information, and at this time, and I'm not going to speak for the committee because the committee has not met to discuss this question, but at this time, it seems to me the answer to question 2 is also yes, and that they did discontinue operations for a continuous period in excess of 30 days. I would like to leave that open to discussion because, one of the things that we were curious about at our last CON meeting last month was whether or not question 2, how was that answered? And it seems to me, I think we have documentation now that shows that they were not in operation for these period in excess of 30 days. I think they, even the squad themselves could not truly give us the date that would, dispute this lapse of service. So, I leave that up to the council's interpretation, but my feeling is, based on what I'm seeing tonight, based on the weight of the evidence, that answer for question number 2 is yes.
Evan, a quick question for you. Are you speaking for your committee, or are you just speaking for yourself? I just want to be clear.
Speaking for myself. The committee has not met to discuss. We have all the committee members here this evening, so if any of the other committee members wish to interpret this or make a comment on it, I certainly encourage that.
Wasn't there an issue about a quorum with respect to the committee?
One of the concerns we had with the CON committee, we had 2 members that we anticipated would recuse. That leaves us with 3 members. And my concern until I had further answers, if we had voted last month, I would have probably abstained because I didn't have the information I was looking for, which would leave 2 voting members, not give a majority or a quorum. So we did not take any action on this prior to last month's council meeting.
So, just for the record, there is no recommendation one way or the other coming out of the con, other than the fact that the con has determined that the transferee is competent and fit?
That was a letter received from the Department of Health that claims that they are fit and competent. And I didn't hear anything this evening or any other discussion periods that disputed that proclamation from DOH. I don't think that's a question here tonight.
Well, I just want to be clear on the recommendation that's coming out of the con committee.
Absolutely.
Was the recommendation that the transferee is fit and competent? Is that the recommendation of the committee, or was that vote not taken?
We didn't actually vote on that,
okay.
But this member feels that they are fit and competent.
So for the record, there, with respect to each of the items, each of the questions, there is no recommendation from the con committee,
At
correct?
this time, that's correct.
Thank you. At this point, the matter would be turned over to the Remsco to make a fact-finding determination, to make a determination on the transfer and the fact-finding determination with respect to the requirements set forth in paragraph 4 of section 3010, that is, did the transfer discontinue operations, and does the Remsco approve the transfer?
Public hearing closed then?
There being nothing further, the record is complete. Exhibits A through S, thank you. The hearing is closed.
Okay. I'll call the Remsco meeting back to order. First matter at hand really is dealing with the state's finding of fitness and competency. We need a motion to accept or not accept the state's finding of fitness and competency. Evans?
I'll make that motion.
Could you please state the motion?
I'd like to make a motion that the Remsco accept the report from the Department of Health that finds no bar to the fitness and competency of Empire Ambulance.
Okay, a second. Mike, thank you. Any discussion on that? Any questions?
Can we just clarify, it's trail service? Is that correct, Steve?
Correct. The application is transferred to Troy Ambulance Service.
Just on record, just the way it was mentioned. Okay.
Just the date of that letter, from the state.
I'm sorry.
The date of the letter from the state, same thing fit.
Terry, do you have that one handy?
Yes, I do. It's September 22nd, 2011. Signed by Gary Tuttle. Based on the department's investigation, there appears to be no bar to this agency and the corporate officers' individual fitness and competency as described in Article 30 of the New York State Public Health Law.
Any other questions?
It's Exhibit F in the record, by the way.
Just a point of order, we have to do a roll call vote, correct, Rich?
I think you should, yes.
Yeah, I agree. And to pass the motion, it needs the majority of the seated members or the members present?
It needs a majority of the seated members. I have 0606 in front of me as well. In order to pass this resolution, according to Mr. Rossi's directive to Remsco, CMAX, the State Council,